But ultimately, I think Topuria, it's not as big of a mismatch as most people think, but it's definitely a mismatch, and that's just because we're talking Ilia Topuria. Now, if we were talking a year ago and we were talking about the lightweight division and Paddy after our fight in April and him maybe fighting next, I think he's got more of a chance. But I think Ilia Topuria is easily the most talented guy, not just in our division, but I think in the entire sport.
He is, of course, one of the most exciting fighters in the history of the sport. He is now also turning into a professional golfer, apparently. It is always my great pleasure to catch up with the man himself, Michael Chandler. Michael, how are you?
I'm good, man. I still haven't taken off enough strokes on the golf game as I would have liked. I used to have the excuse, when I first started playing, I'm like, oh man, I just got my clubs. I just started. Now it's been like 4 or 5 years and I do play a decent amount. And now I'm like, I got no excuse. But I did just play Gaethje the other day and I did decent. I lost, but he's easily the best golfer in the UFC. So I'll catch up to him eventually.
How was it? Was it 9 or 18 holes? How many?
We played 18, but we only filmed 9. So we actually did film the whole thing. It was kind of a competition. It was the rematch. We did match play. So each hole, whoever won got to hit somebody with a leg kick. So I took a lot more leg kicks than he did, even though he was giving me strokes. But it was a lot of fun, man. Obviously, I think it just shows the kind of the misconception that, did I want to absolutely mollywop him whenever we fought each other? And did he absolutely want to rearrange my face? Absolutely. But when you get done, you get outside the octagon, man, there's a lot of respect. He and I are cut from the same cloth and we both like golf. So maybe we might even team up and then start challenging other, who's the best golfers on this professional sports team? Who's the best golfers in Nashville in the music industry? So we'll see. It was fun.
I love it. So now, hold on. So you played golf with Justin Gaethje. What are the chances you eventually play golf with Dustin Poirier? Is there a world where that happens?
Maybe, maybe. I think me and him are going to start a podcast together or something. No, I mean, we'll see. I don't know if we'll ever bury that hatchet, but it would be nice if we did. But you never know. Never say never, man. Ultimately, like I said, all of us fighters, as much animosity as there is here and there, or misinterpretations of words and interviews and trash talk, there's a lot of mutual respect. So I got a ton of respect for Dustin. Love what he did with his entire career. I wish him well in his retirement, and he needs to pick up some golf clubs.
I always remember talking to you. This is going back maybe a year and a half ago when Patricia Pitbull was coming in. And everyone's like, "Oh, are you going to fight him?" And you're like, "I have no animosity towards him. Like, it was a fight. We fought. It's over." And I think people get misconstrued that you just hold on to this grudge forever. Although I will say, like Daniel Cormier and John Jones, I think they're still holding on to a grudge. But I know those guys just kind of move on.
Yeah, there's a couple here and there where you're like, man, that one may never see its course. But yeah, I mean, win or lose, I've never, I've had my moments, obviously, but overall, man, it's just like, hey, forgive, forget. It was a part of my career. It was a part of my life, a part of my journey. I was a part of yours. Ultimately, I got respect for you, even if we have our differences, even if you beat me, even if I beat you. So yeah, no plans of fighting Patricio anytime soon.
So lots to talk about, Michael, but let's just start with the most obvious question, which is your return to action. I think everyone is looking at this big White House card coming in 2026. We all know Conor McGregor is returning it, and that seems to be the fight he's going to be targeted for. Dana White has said he's taking it seriously, and he has a lot of faith that Conor's actually making this comeback. So I think the natural question that's come up again is, of course, like, are we going to finally get to see the Michael Chandler Conor McGregor fight we were supposed to see, a couple of years ago? So where are you at? What, I don't know what kind of talks you've had. I know Dana said they're not going to start matchmaking until next year, but like, where's your head at in terms of your return to action?
I think obviously that's a fight that I want. I want the White House. First and foremost, I want the White House. Ideally, if it becomes Conor, that would be awesome. Obviously we have some animosity or some unfinished business. Once again, I just said there's not really animosity. I got respect for him. He's got respect for me, but we do have an unfinished business. And he has, expressed interest, when he put out that meme of me and him. I guess you could call it a meme. It was AI, it was me and him. He's called me out on Twitter and said we have unfinished business, and we do. We have unfinished business. we would be the only fighters not to fight after the Ultimate Fighter who were in the same weight class. And Conor and I, it makes sense. I did my job. I signed on the dotted line. I've still never pulled out of a fight, never missed weight. The most important thing about this White House card, and whether I am a shoe-in for it or not, when you're building a card of this magnitude, it's not necessarily even about putting on the best fight. It's about putting on the best fights that are the most reliable. Which fighters and which matchups, which marquee contests are going to happen on the White House lawn that have an almost virtual certainty of actually happening. In this crazy sport, there are no guarantees, but I'm about as sure as a guarantee as you possibly could be. Like I said, never missed weight, never pull out of a fight. And if I can walk to the octagon, if I can physically make it to the octagon, I'm showing up that cage, that octagon door is closing, and I'm putting on a show for the fans.
Well, and the reality is, like, this is going to, I mean, listen, UFC is an international organization, but right now, I think the only champion we have that's an American is Kayla Harrison, which is awesome. And I think Kayla being on that card would make a lot of sense. She's an Olympic gold medalist 2 times over. I think that makes a lot of sense. But let's be honest, like, I'm not trying to knock any of the other champions or fighters out there, but it is a freaking celebration for America. How do we not have an American in the main event? Now, I get Conor. Conor's a star, and Conor's a huge guy. I know he's met with President Trump and, those kind of things, and that's awesome. But, like, it's got to be, if it's going to be Conor, it's got to be an American fighting him, right? You can't fight anybody else. So, like, I think it just makes perfect sense to be you and him.
Agree. Yeah. I mean, like I said, we built the foundation with Tough 31. We have unfinished business. We did get to within, what was it, 13 days before the June 29th card, International Fight Week last year, whenever the news broke. I got the call from Hunter Campbell that he really was not going to fight. And then since then, it's been a little bit of talk about me and him there and there. There's never talks of any other opponent. So there's no other opponent that really makes sense. Now, obviously, there's always going to be speculation. Would love to see Conor fight this guy or that guy. But ultimately, Conor knows. And I believe as much flack as he takes, he's more of a man of his word when it comes to this sport than people give him credit for. Now, with that being said, it does make sense. And with that being said, the UFC is in charge. Dana and Hunter can make whatever decision that they want. But I'm the type of guy who trusts my gut on this, and I believe it's going to be me and Conor. If Conor's coming back and he's actually fighting at the White House, there's no reason why we should not headline it. And even last week, Dana said, obviously, Conor has always been that guy. We've talked to him 48 hours before the fight, opponent changed, switched it up, and he shows up. If anything, those are the type of things that fuel Conor. So the White House makes a lot of sense for him to come back. And obviously, I would love to fight on that card for a multitude of reasons, not the least of which is the fact that it would be the biggest card that the UFC has ever put on the White House lawn, 250th anniversary of this great nation of ours. And it would absolutely be an honor.
And can I imagine, like, in reality, like, I think we're talking about Conor, but because I know how historic this card is and I know your relationship to being on that card, can I imagine if they're like, hey, Michael, we want you on the card, but you're going to be the first fight in the prelims, you would probably be like, sign me up, because I know that's how badly you want on that White House card.
Yeah, and also, I'm the kind of guy where I know my worth, and I will always fight for myself, and I will always negotiate hard, but never let your ego get in the way of things. And I think a lot of men and women do that in this sport. Show up, do the right thing, be reliable, sign your name to a dotted line, and see through to your commitment. And I've done that nonstop since actually almost exactly 5 years ago. Dana announced my signing of the UFC on September 17th of 2020, which is tomorrow. And I've done nothing but that. I've been a man of my word. I've showed up with my work boots on. I said I wasn't going to be here for a long time. I was going to be here for a good time. And my goodness, we have had an absolute blast. And yeah, they asked me to be the first fight on the prelims. I will be there. Just like I would be if they called me for any other card. And they said, just like with me and Justin Gaethje, they moved us to the first fight of the night instead of the feature fight. It did not matter to me. A fight's a fight. The octagon door closes, that bell rings, and you bite down your mouthpiece and you go out there and do what God has called you to do.
I feel like I've asked you a version of this question. Like, I can't remember how many times we've talked between the Ultimate Fighter and now about Conor coming back. And I know the answer is varied, because at certain points, like, oh yeah, this fight's happening, it's going to happen. Then obviously we had the cancellation after that. And I think the last time we talked before the Paddy Pimblett fight, I'd ask you, and you said your heart of hearts, I just don't think it's going to happen. Like, I of course I want him to come back, but I just don't think. Now, this White House card seems to have changed things. He got back in the drug testing pool. He's training. I know he's kind of stepped away. He just announced he's no longer running for president of Ireland. Like, it seems like he's really focused. Dana says he's serious. I talked to Dave Feldman from BKFC, his business partner. He says he's taking this very seriously. He's really taking it seriously, getting back into training. So I know, once again, here is the question. In your heart of hearts, do you believe like this is the Conor comeback? Like we are actually going to see, unless disaster strikes, which unfortunately that's the nature of this business, but unless disaster strikes, do you really believe the White House card 2026, we will see Conor McGregor?
I think we're definitely a lot closer today than we ever have been. I've heard the comments from Feldman, his business partner, who they spend a lot of time with. I do have some inside sources of people close to him who have said the same exact sentiment. And obviously, withdrawing from the race of president of Ireland gets his focus a little bit more back on training. And I've said a version of this 1,000 times too about us fighters in general. You want when you get into the sport, you want the biggest fights, the brightest lights, the most amount of money, the most eyeballs you possibly can. And Conor has been no exception to that, or Conor has done that his entire career, and all of the pay-per-view records and the biggest spectacles that you possibly could be on. That's exactly what Conor McGregor's brand is. And that's exactly what myself and every single fighter wants. So yeah, when this White House fight card got announced, obviously Conor tweeted about it or threw something out there about it. And, it seemed like a lot of, sometimes smoke and mirrors, a little bit of blunder here and there, but ultimately, if there ever was a card that Conor McGregor comes back for, it makes a lot of sense that it would be this one, because it just, until they put an octagon on Mars or they put an octagon on the top of Mount Rushmore or something, I can't really think of a place that could be more historic, where the entire world will tune in, not to mention the new Paramount deal with network television. This would be live on network television. It would be rivaling the Super Bowl in my honest opinion. So it doesn't get any bigger than this in this sport, especially. So I think we're closer now than we ever have been. I've always said, if you're a betting man, don't put money on him necessarily coming back. But now this changes things a lot. In my heart of hearts, I think I'm fighting Conor McGregor at the White House, and that sure does make a ton of sense for a multitude of reasons.
I know, going back in time, like when the Conor thing was going on, like you were focused and you were promised, and you said, "Hey, I've talked to the UFC. They're telling me it's still going to happen." Now, once you got verification it wasn't happening, boom, you jump right back in there for Charles Oliveira. There's no blinking, no hesitating. You jump right back in there. Same thing with Paddy Pimblett. They offer you Paddy Pimblett, sure, I'll take the fight. You never back down from that. But knowing that the White House card is so huge, I mean, this is historic. It may never happen again. This may be a one-of-one card, which we really can't say that about many UFC cards. Are you willing to wait? I guess is the question I'm getting at. Like, I know you're a guy, like if they call you, say, "Hey, we need you," you answer. But that card is so huge, it's so historic. Is there a party that's like, if that's a reality, if they're like, "Hey, we want you for the White House card, it's going to be Conor, but are you willing to wait?" Because I think they're talking June, July next year. I don't know the exact timing, because it's around July 4th. Are you willing to wait that long to make your return?
Yeah, I'm willing to wait. I am, and I think, man, time flies in this sport big time. And especially with as busy as I am, raising 3 kids and all the different businesses I'm working on. Plus I'm on the road every single week for the next 6 weeks straight, out there grinding with my business partners. I'm speaking on 3 different stages between now and November, probably in front of 30 or 40,000 people in total in those events. I just finished my book. I got a production company that I'm talking to tomorrow about green lighting my documentary that we're coming out with, of 15 years of footage. I've got a lot of really cool things going on, not to mention the fact that we're going to need months and months, extra months, to promote this card, to promote this fight. So obviously, waiting and myself are synonymous when it comes to, in a lot of people's eyes, because of the Ultimate Fighter before and all that stuff. But this one's not that far away. Plus, I did have 2 fights back to back in 5 months. As soon as I made the decision to jump right back in, it was Oliveira in November. It was Paddy in April. Had a torn meniscus, torn adductor muscle, torn hamstring, jacked up left leg, barely got healthy by the time it was time to start that training camp, and then had to kind of gingerly jump in. But I did, and I wanted to throw myself into the fire. This is a very much a sink or swim sport. And before you know it, if you don't say yes, this sport will pass you by. So I wanted to jump in and be active right away. And now we're focused a lot on things outside of the octagon, and really focusing on the mental, the spiritual, and obviously the physical. But I'm definitely willing to wait, because it's not that long. It's not that far away when you really think about the promotion that we're gonna have to throw into this fight.
100%. And I know, listen, you go into every single fight with the goal of going out there, winning, knocking out, finishing your opponent. But we also know you have this reputation and you've earned it as one of the most exciting fighters to ever step in the sport. But knowing them, and we'll talk, I'm sure if the fight becomes official, we'll talk, a little bit more around that time. But can I imagine, like, I know there's pressure in every fight, but like in the back of your head, you're fighting Conor McGregor on the White House lawn, President Trump sitting 10 feet away. That's got to be one of those, like, I got to win this fight for America kind of things, right? Like, because if you're the American in the main event, like you can't let that one go, right? Like you cannot possibly let Conor win that one.
Yeah, no, it's a great question, and it's a great sentiment. Yeah, it's America's birthday. 250 years, and I would be the guy carrying the stars and bars, red, white, and blue, to the octagon in what we'd assume would be the main event. So obviously that comes with a little bit of extra pressure, a lot of extra layers. I do feel like I love this country. I love the people of this country. I love so many things about being an American, and I truly believe that we are the greatest country ever assembled. We have our black eyes, we have our blemishes, we have our moments, we have our pain. Obviously, over the last week or so, we've been experiencing a lot of that. But I think this is a beautiful celebration of what this country is and who we are as Americans. And I would love the opportunity to be it. And we would definitely have to go out there, dot our I's, cross our T's, and go out there and not just beat Conor, but dominate him and systematically and surgically break the man down, and then be able to be draped in the stars and bars and get my hand raised right there on the White House lawn. I've dreamt about it. I have visualized it ever since this announcement was made that we were going to be doing this fight on the White House lawn, and I believe it's going to come to fruition. We'll see.
I'm putting you on the spot by asking you this, but when they have these kind of big events like this, like there's always like a special thing. Like when they did the BMF title years ago, The Rock came in and put the title around him. And then obviously with Justin and Dustin, they had Jorge Masvidal come up with the title around. I know technically, like you and Conor, there wouldn't be a title online, but is there any party that feels like if everything goes well, you get this fight, you get the White House card, President Trump raising your arm in the octagon? Is that like the idea? Like, would that be like a dream scenario?
That sounds pretty darn cool. I mean, there's almost nothing that is impossible when you think about well, first of all, this sounded impossible just 6 months ago to do a fight at the White House. And now you get it set. And yeah, I mean, the amount of things that are on the table, nothing is off the table. So that would actually be really, really be cool. Donald Trump coming in and raising my arm, to get a win for America on his birthday. And, yeah, I mean, that would be cool. Like you said, there's no belt on the line, but then again, maybe they'll come out with a White House belt, something cool, for this momentous occasion that we can throw on our shelves in our offices and stuff. But that would absolutely be a blast. But even if that did not happen, just the opportunity to fight in front of our president again, to fight at the White House would be an absolute dream come true. And, having it on network television for the entire country to see, seems like the perfect scenario.
I love it. Real quick before I get you out here, Michael, obviously, like, I know beyond your own career, you always keep a close eye on the sport, what's going on. I think you're a tremendous analyst. I know you've done that here and there on the site when you have the time, because you don't have a lot of time. But obviously your last fight, you took on a guy in Paddy Pimblett, and I remember talking to you when the fight got made. There was no hesitation, no blinking, maybe I don't want to fight this guy. You took it, and obviously, listen, it went his way. That's the way the sport goes sometimes. But right now, we're kind of up in the air about what's going on at lightweight. And I know you've had a lot of high praise for Ilia Topuria, what he did to go out there and beat Charles Oliveira and become champion. But there's just so much debate right now. Are we going to see Ilia against Arman? Are we going to see Ilia against Paddy? Let me ask you, as a guy who spent time in the cage with Paddy and a guy who has obviously studied and you've seen what Ilia has done, what kind of a chance do you give a guy like Paddy Pimblett against an Ilia Topuria? Because I think on paper, everyone's like, oh, come on, it's a mismatch right now. Ilia's looks so good, so much power. But I mean, I'll be the first to admit it. I told you this and I said it publicly. I said, I think you fighting Paddy was a mismatch. Credit to Paddy. He proved me wrong. But people are saying it again. It's a mismatch when he fights Ilia. What kind of a chance do you give Paddy if he gets that Ilia Topuria fight?
It's a good question, because Paddy is better than most will give him credit for. Obviously, I've shared the octagon with him. his presence, his octagon presence was on point. He knew where he needed to be. He was completely okay with getting taken down that first round. He kept great distance, kept me off with the kicks. Topuria being a little bit shorter than me, but great punching power, punches and bunches, and not just the punches when he throws them and they land, but knowing when to throw his combinations, knowing when to not throw his combinations, when to just stalk. And he does a really good job of stalking guys, because most guys are going to be running away from that right hand, that left hook, the uppercut. Because obviously, as we saw with Charles Oliveira, as we saw in a lot of Topuria's fights, the man will put out anybody that he's going to fight. I think Paddy would have a good chance to keep it past a round or two, because he's not going to engage, I think, as much as Oliveira did, and we all found out how Oliveira would do if that right hand left hook lands. But ultimately, I think Topuria, it's not as big of a mismatch as most people think, but it's definitely a mismatch, and that's just because we're talking Ilia Topuria. Now, if we were talking a year ago and we were talking about the lightweight division and Paddy, after our fight in April, and him maybe fighting next, I think he's got more of a chance. But I think Ilia Topuria is easily the most talented guy, not just in our division, but I think in the entire sport. And that's my personal opinion. So we'll see if that fight gets made. But I do think Paddy would be not in a great scenario for him to go out there and fight fire with probably the best striker on the planet.
So, in your opinion, this is taken away like who's getting the shot. This is just more about like looking at the division as a whole, because Islam's gone. Like Islam's going to welterweight. Seems like that's going to be his division. I would assume, unless he loses, probably for the rest of his career. He's not, it's not like he's, I know it is hard to go up and down a weight and things like that. So let's just take Islam out of the equation. I know you've had high praise for Justin Gaethje getting the title shot. Paddy's out there, and of course you got Arman Sarukian. In your opinion, Michael, who do you believe is the toughest matchup for Ilia? Not who's going to get the fight. Who has the best chance to beat him out of the current crop of lightweight contenders? And also taking yourself out of the equation, because I know there's a world where you're like, I have a game plan, I can beat that guy. But take yourself out of the equation. Who right now has the best chance of actually beating Ilia?
Yeah, I do see people, talking online that they want to see me fight Ilia, and it's like, guys, I have not earned that. I had the opportunity. If I would have beat Charles, I could have fought Ilia next. But man, I mean, obviously those three guys, Gaethje, Paddy, and Arman, are kind of the 1A and 1B of everybody's hope or thought of who's going to fight him next. So I think just between those guys, because I can't really think right now of somebody who I think would be who has the resume and strength of schedule thus far to say that they'd be able to go out there and have a decent showing against Ilia. Of the three, I tend to lean towards Arman, because Arman's got, I think, the best grappling prowess, probably the strongest guy of those three. Paddy's probably the biggest guy, but Paddy's got kind of that loosey-goosey jiu-jitsu, if you will, compared to like Arman's a little bit more hammering. And then Gaethje obviously has grappling. We were just talking the other day, he was an All-American, the Division I wrestling. He's got grappling, he's got wrestling, he just chooses not to use it. So that would be largely a stand-up battle when it becomes to those two. I think Arman of those three, but I don't think Arman is getting the next title shot. I think the UFC realizes, one, you pulled out of the fight the day before, you need to fight another, and two, you're just not that interesting. So we'll see.
Yeah, I love Justin. I think Justin's earned it, but I'm like, I think about that new Paramount deal, and I'm like, could you imagine a bigger way to kick it off than something like Ilia and Paddy? I mean, got to be honest, that's a massive fight. But so would Ilia and Justin. Those are both big fights. But I feel like that's what we're careening towards, because that Paramount deal kicking off next year, like there's no way they're not going to do like a massive card in January to kick that off. And I think Ilia is probably going to be the guy. It just depends on who he fights.
Yeah, and Gaethje, to give Gaethje credit, obviously I only say that because I'm thinking grappling heavy, and Gaethje hasn't ever been a grappling heavy guy. However, Justin Gaethje was fighting ill-advised for a very long time, and everybody was saying, hey man, your career's going to be over in 2 fights if you don't clean this up. And then him and Trevor Whitman putting together beautiful game plans with him and Tony Ferguson, and you saw his last fight with Fiziev. He's a competitor, and he wants to win, and he knows how to win, and he knows how to put together game plans, and he knows how to stick to game plans. So I think Ilia versus Gaethje would be almost as big, and then you start thinking about, the bigger fight and you start thinking about matchups and you start thinking about what gets people excited. Being a promoter is not an easy thing. These guys got a lot of hard decisions to make, so we'll see what they do.
And I remember, obviously when your fight with Conor was scheduled, you told me many times, like, I'll go to welterweight. I have no problem going to welterweight and fight. Can I ask real quick, how do you think Islam's going to do at welterweight? Because it is a different animal. And Jack Della Maddalena, I think everyone just doesn't give this guy enough credit for how good he is and how good he got. I mean, the way he countered Bilal Muhammad, I don't think a lot of people saw that coming, myself included, because of the Gilbert Burns fights and some other fights where he got taken down. Well, he certainly worked and he shored up his wrestling, did really well. Now I know Islam's a different beast, but like I said, it's going up a weight class. So how do you think Islam does at welterweight in this particular fight? I know every fight's different, but against a guy like Jack Della Maddalena.
Yeah, I think Islam is not going to be a small welterweight. He's going to be decent in size up there. He's got some height. Obviously Jack's taller because he's a taller lightweight. But I agree with you. I think Jack has not gotten the credit that he deserves for how good he is. Especially with his last fight prior, and then just the way he throws the combinations going to the head and the body, and then now you're starting to add in a little bit of great wrestling defense. I think he'd easily be the best striker with the most power that Islam has ever faced. You saw him versus Poirier, and the fight a couple fights ago was largely a stand-up battle, and Islam's hands are getting better. But Jack, I think, is a different animal, and he's longer, and he hits harder, the hardest that Islam has ever been hit, most likely. But I think Islam will do well. I think that is a pick'em fight for me. I think it's a 50-50. Don't know where you would put your bets on that one, but I think he does well. I think Islam will settle into the weight class. The dude's a competitor. The dude knows how to win. The dude is a champion, believes he's a champion, and doesn't want to lose a belt anytime soon. Obviously, he had to did he vacate the 55 belt? Yeah,
Yep.
Vacated the belt. Obviously had to, and then now he wants to win another one and stake his claim at welterweight.
I love it. Well, I tell you what, Michael, I know a huge part of our conversation is about the White House card. I think it should be about the White House. I do like the idea of maybe doing a White House title. I think that is kind of a cool idea, by the way. Like I said, President Trump raising your hand, but President Trump putting a title around your waist might even be better. So
cool. Yeah, it'd be a one of one thing, like a belt, obviously, an octagon with a White House in the middle, or whatever. It would be it'd be pretty cool. I mean, it's one of those things where you ride the fine line between like really cool historic event, and then some people think there's like cheesy things that happen, but to me that would be absolutely awesome. So we shall see. And like we said, we're in September right now. We're not that far away. Was it 10 months away? So we'll see.
I mean, come on. Like I said, you couldn't. I mean, this is going to be a one-of-one card. I think it's the perfect time for you to come back, and it's perfect time for the Conor fight to happen. I think it just makes all the sense in the world. I think it's just like I said. I know Dana said I think February is going to start matchmaking. I hope by like March we hear about Chandler McGregor is booked. I think that's the perfect main event. And some fights just supersede title fights. Like this is bigger than any title fight at the White House. Come on, it's perfect.
I think so, man. And it's one of those things that people, we've talked about it for a very long time. It's a matchup that people want to see. Win, lose, or draw. We've always been in big, exciting fights. And it's unfinished business. It's truly unfinished business. It would seem and feel weird if the fight never did happen, So, and obviously, if he wants to retire and sail off into the sunset, that's one thing. But if he comes back, it's got to be Chandler versus McGregor at the White House. And I think there's a lot of people on board with that. So we'll go with that.